He was so engrossed in playing the game that, in the joy of his imminent victory, he stumbled and lost consciousness, and when his thoughts returned, there was a gaping void in his memory which caused a feeling of sudden death. Then the scene shifted to a first-person view. The rifle's sight was aimed at a distant house among the tall grass, and at the same time the thought flashed through his head that he continued to play as usual, despite the strangeness of what was happening. After this, the young player shouted that he had found the old man, demanding his death, and he snapped back, calling camping a crime, and both, with weapons at the ready, froze before the shot. Then the preacher calmly remarked that the young man was still far from perfect, and he, admitting defeat, loudly declared his defeat. Then the same voice called itself the creator and god of this game, warning them not to take it lightly, while the starry night sky spread out above them. Meanwhile, someone was lying face down near the bookcase and realized that he was seeing his own dead body, realizing that his previous doubts were in vain. Then came a lively explanation about how the games brought joy, how everyone put their whole heart into them, and how they watched the process from above, and the interlocutor only smiled, regretting that he had not managed to play more. After that, the realization came that time had run out, and the question arose whether this was connected with the body, which emanated anxiety. Next came the calm explanation that with the death of the body the soul also disappears, which means that the moment of farewell has come, and this truth was accepted without objection. Then came the admission that there were no regrets, life had been lived to the fullest, there had been enough games, and it all left a feeling of completion. Later, the idea was expressed about the inevitability of fate, beyond the control of even a deity, and that love for creation gives rise to a reciprocal affection for the player, while the controller fell nearby. Following this, the shining disembodied presence spoke of a desire to help, offering a last chance to someone who truly loved games. Suddenly consciousness returned, and someone woke up from an insistent call, trying to figure out if he was really being called. Then Fina, filled with anxiety and relief, hastily called the doctor, seeing how the patient came to his senses, and the thought of timely rescue flashed through her mind. After this, Wayne noticed that he was looking at someone else's hands, and he was overcome with acute bewilderment at what was happening. Then came the question of whether he had become a child, where he was and who was nearby, and these thoughts mixed with the surging feelings. Meanwhile, Wayne, clutching his head, tried to comprehend what was happening, catching the words that some higher being had reincarnated him as another person. Then came the explanation that the child was doomed from the start, his soul gone and impossible to bring back, while the interlocutor listened with her back turned. After this, sitting on the bed, he learned that the body was still alive and sheltered his soul, but the memory and consciousness would gradually dissolve, giving way to the personality of the child. And finally his gaze fell on the weapon lying on the wooden floor, and a voice explained that it was a gift, designed to help preserve memories, although dictated by personal desire, but chosen as an appropriate tool. Fina hugged Wayne with relief, telling him how much she had been worried, and at that moment a reminder came to his mind that he had once loved games with all his heart and lived for them. He asked who she was, and the preacher standing next to him calmly noted that Wayne had lost his memory due to an accident, and then it dawned on him that the confused man in front of him, his mother. After that, Wayne found himself alone in the soft glow of light, quietly repeating his name as if cementing it in his mind, gradually accepting reality. Then the picture changed to a hospital room, where the question arose as to why he was here and whether this was a hospital, and next to him a girl with blonde hair was crying. Then Fina joyfully hugged him even tighter, assuring him that she would not let go, and the observer quickly warned that such pressure could suffocate him. After this, the girl asked him not to overexert himself for a while, and he thanked her for her concern, and then she asked what he wanted to eat at home, to which he replied that he would agree to any dish prepared by his mother. Then I thought that I remembered everything vaguely and felt my own carelessness, after which I decided, never make my mother cry again and become much stronger. After some time, Wayne stood with a drawn sword in front of a roaring dragon and noted that the feeling was strikingly reminiscent of a hero from a dream or a game. Meanwhile, she gently asked him to open his mouth. Fina encouraged him to eat on his own, reminding him not to overexert himself, while he assured her that he could handle it. After this, she carefully served the food, and he noted to himself that after his discharge she began to cuddle up to him noticeably more often, which revealed her anxiety and affection. Wayne then tried to focus on his studies, but Fina jokingly demanded a kiss, calling him cute and professing her love, and he realized that she was reserved on the outside but behaved differently at home. A little later, the girl in a headscarf walked confidently along a narrow street between wooden houses, and nearby they were discussing how she managed to grow up healthy despite excessive care. 4 years passed, and 12-year-old Wayne stood in the woods with a focused gaze, aiming a heavy weapon and preparing to fire. Then he reflected that since that incident he had this trunk, which he felt was the main source of strength, although the reason for this was unclear, and the word itself escaped his lips. After this, while in the cave, he calmly noted that the object appeared exactly as he had said. As Wayne held the gun, he felt a strange familiarity with it and thought about the trigger, comparing the feeling to a drop of water soaking into dry sand, as if the gun were sucking something inside. Then came the realization of power. The bullets flew out one after another, the sounds of shots and reloading merging, emphasizing the power of this tool with each press. After that, a trembling hand inserted a cartridge into the revolver, and he stepped forward cautiously, thinking that he would become stronger but feeling his strength leaving him. She soon found herself leaning over the unconscious Wayne, and her expression made it clear that she had realized where they were. Finally, he came to his senses and wondered if it was connected with the previous recharge, and the mentorsa hugged him with relief and reminded him not to push himself to the limit. Boy, he promised his mother to be more careful with weapons in the future so as not to make her cry anymore, and in response he felt warm hands gently pressing her towards himself. In this gesture one could read anxious concern. After this, the boy sat motionless in the bathtub and thought that from that very night when he made his promise, his mother's guardianship became even stronger, as if she was afraid to let him go even a step. Then the mentorsa calmly noted that caries is a frightening thing, and asked to open my mouth wide, carefully examining my teeth. Soon he suddenly slipped into the water and asked what had happened, and the figure sitting behind him on the bench offered to wash him herself, asking if it was pleasant, and he sheepishly agreed. That same night, lying awake, he tried to understand what was happening, and the longer he thought, the clearer the feeling became that this had all gone too far. After a while, Fina apologized for her recent outburst, explaining that she was afraid he would grow up, leave her for another woman, and become distant, and Wayne quietly noted to himself how suddenly these feelings had come over her. Later, she called out to him, holding an apple and a knife in her hands, and suddenly asked him what he wanted to be in the future, as if this question had been waiting for its moment for a long time. Then she added that he was almost an adult and had to think about his future path, to which he asked in surprise why the conversation had turned to this so abruptly. After thinking for a while, he admitted that he wanted to travel, see different places and experience a real adventure rather than sit in one place. The conversation continued outside a large building where the suggestion was made to enroll in a military academy, explaining that this was the path of a soldier, and immediately adding that it would be even more reasonable to obtain reservist status. They went on to explain that with this choice, exploring the world, new ruins and caves would become easier, as permissions and clearances would be granted much more readily. A story was told in the stone corridor about how many people become adventurers after receiving qualifications, and that dungeon expeditions bring many impressions, and this idea clearly captivated him. After this, they calmly informed him that next year he should go to the academy, clarifying that it was a boarding school with a dormitory, and he doubted whether he was ready for life outside the home. Then the mother agreed to support this choice, offering to begin preparations tomorrow, and he thanked her and accepted this decision as a necessary payment for the future. The days passed, and the mentorsa explained the basics of magical theory, while Fina persistently demonstrated body exercises and combat techniques, not hiding her determination. As time went by, Wayne stood confidently in the forest, and a quiet voice noted that he had become a strong young man, and then someone noticed that a magic bus had already arrived nearby. Soon Fina said it was time to go, and he replied that he would not see her for a while as they stood side by side among the trees. Then he stepped onto the creaky floor, went to the window, looked out, and, turning around, said that he was leaving, asking them to take care of themselves, and in response, he heard wishes for a safe journey. As he was already moving away, he realized that she seemed to have gently pushed him forward, although in fact she did not want to part, and her smile behind the glass seemed to say that there was nothing to worry about. Clenching his fists, he vowed to himself to become so strong that one day even his mother would be surprised by his return, and mentally challenged the military school, accepting it without hesitation. The girl stretched contentedly and said that she too would come out soon, as long as she locked the door, but somewhere behind the scenes remained the thought that from that day on, the door to Fina's house had not been opened for 3 whole years. Then a group of young men gathered in front of the military academy building, and the speaker greeted them, announcing that this was where they would spend the next 3 years of their lives. After this, the mentor warned that the path would be full of obstacles and trials, but only by going through them could everyone be called a real soldier, and the listeners heeded these words without unnecessary noise. A little later, the priest added that a true fighter is one who supports his comrades and fights shoulder to shoulder, after which the teacher wished everyone success in reaching graduation and announced that the opening speech was over. Then the instructor cheerfully offered to give them a tour of the dormitory after the director's speech, and the young man quietly noted that almost everyone around him looked noticeably older than him. She then opened the door and explained that this was the academic building where classes would be held, inviting everyone to come inside, and he and another guy followed. Along the way, an explanation was given that the flower bed on the side was maintained by the beautification committee and that shady dealings behind the dormitory could easily lead to expulsion from the academy if they reported it to the teachers. Then the mentor directed everyone to the entrance of the residential building, promising to distribute materials there, and he thought about the next 3 years and firmly decided not to give up. Once there, she explained that the dormitory had 3 floors, 4-person rooms, where a first-year student lived with 2 or 3 older students. She then said that they would be issuing assignments soon and that it was imperative to say hello to the neighbors. He thought for a moment, realizing that he had done it alone, without anyone he knew, and he caught himself thinking that it would have been calmer if someone his own age had been nearby. At that moment, Norman shook his hand in a friendly but firm manner and asked why he looked so tense, and Wayne responded haltingly, not immediately finding the words. A little later, the bald man showed the piece of paper and noticed that there were only 2 students of this age, AEE. He nervously asked again how he knew about it. Go and me. Meanwhile, the bald man enthusiastically told the guy that the girl named Sharon was quite nice, and even offered to help them get closer while she silently looked at the paper, as if thinking about something of her own. He awkwardly agreed to get along when she reminded them that they would have to share a room, and the girl with glasses added that even in military school it was worth enjoying youth. Norman reacted with surprise to the words about shared rooms, after which he asked if he had caught his eye, and immediately clarified that he himself would only have guys in his room. He said with a smile that he preferred strong girls and had never seen one like that, and someone's voiceover asked if this was about the one who was handing out the assignments. Sharon immediately and enthusiastically invited him to go to the dorm together, and boy, he hastened to explain that he was talking about muscles, not about the chest, to which she responded, awkward laughed. Left alone for a moment, he noted that he was nervous and noticed that Sharon was also alone, thinking that it would be easier with 2 people, after which he heard a farewell and a promise to see him tomorrow in class. Then came the invitation to enter room 208, and a hesitant voice asked if this was the right place, while hoping that the elders would be kind. Finally, the teacher warmly greeted the newcomer, calling him a freshman, and he was mentally amazed that he would have to share a room with a girl, until someone from the side told Edna about the new tenant. Wayne bowed awkwardly, introduced himself, and announced that he was under her supervision from that day on, after which the mentor smiled warmly, advised him not to be so reserved, and invited Edna to say hello too. Then the teacher, crossing her arms and clearly displeased, made a remark about the girl's bad character. Fina quickly nodded in agreement, while the guy himself lay on the bed, watching what was happening from the side. After this, the girl wondered if she had offended anyone with her words, deciding that all people are different, not the same, and at that moment an adult woman gently reassured her, inviting her to go inside without unnecessary worries. A little later, the mentor introduced herself as Holly and, with her usual cheerfulness, suggested that everyone get along with each other, while Wayne quickly responded, asking her to continue to take care of him. Holly then introduced Edna with the same enthusiasm, and she bowed shyly. After Thaddeum with a grinned and offered the bed by the entrance, joking that they had slept on it until yesterday and the smell still lingered, which caused a sharp exclamation of surprise from his interlocutor. Then the guy passionately declared that he wanted to take the top place, and the dark-haired girl immediately declared her word final, to which he only sheepishly agreed, saying that he understood. Then the teacher offered to make tea and advised to sit down after the introductory ceremony, and boy accepted with gratitude. This is a proposal. Suddenly, the same girl asked him point-blank if he was a virgin, causing him to freeze with a cup in his hands, unable to utter a word. After this, the short-haired girl worriedly asked Holly what was going on, and she smirked and teased him, noticing that he was clearly not used to female company. The boy quickly asked her not to make fun of him, mentally complaining that he couldn't say anything at all in front of his mother, but the woman with cat ears caught his reaction and decided that a little teasing was perfectly acceptable. Then one of the adults asked him why he had entered the military academy, suggesting a soldier's path, and in response, the boy explained that he was considering serving in the reserve forces. Next comes a woman in dark suit. She asked to see their face while the other 2 watched, and turned to them to ask which of them was Edna. Then Holly hurried everyone, and the girl reluctantly agreed, complaining that the conversation was only just beginning to gain momentum. After that, he apologized to Holly and said that he had to go, and she calmly replied that they would continue the conversation later. Already on the way out, the girl wondered if she suddenly wanted to give him a tour of the dorm, noting to herself that even Edna had a soft side. Meanwhile, the mentor, crossing her arms again, sternly declared that if he intended to be in the first reserve, he should ask the headman for a room transfer, and he, in response, cautiously inquired whether there was something else hidden behind the dormitory. The girl immediately declared that he should leave because Holly was clearly interested in him, and he let out a surprised interjection. The teacher then explained that after graduation, the girl would be taken into her unit in any case due to her parents' service and influence, so she was used to deciding her own fate and did not intend to give in. Finally, the woman with long hair advised the young man to stay away from the cunning girl, warning that she would make him dependent during his studies, and if he really wanted to get into the first reserve, he had better run away from Holly as far as possible. She insisted on taking him to the dorm leader's room at the end of the first floor, but he immediately made it clear that he had no intention of running away and intended to become stronger, even if the path turned out to be tough. Meanwhile, the girl caught herself thinking that Edna, despite her harsh words and rude manner, had very kind eyes, and the care emanating from her was surprisingly reminiscent of a mother's. Then the guy confidently declared that he had come here specifically for the sake of strength, and this admission made his interlocutor think for a moment, as if she had not expected to hear such a direct answer. After this, Wayne firmly added that running away is a weakness, and he does not intend to avoid Holly, even knowing how much influence she has and how dangerous she can be. A girl with a ponytail nearby clenched her fists and declared that she too would become stronger, and he, looking at her, suddenly realized that next to such people he looked like an inexperienced child. She then abruptly declared that she would force him to say that he wanted to move out, and immediately prepared to strike, leaving no time for reflection. Wayne struggled to his feet after the blow, and the instructor calmly noted that since he hadn't lost consciousness, it meant that training had taken place, after which she added in a harsher tone that this was only the beginning. At that very moment, the girl in the dark suit, she hit the other one furiously, demanding that she say something, and tears of pain immediately flowed down her face. Then she yelled at the guy, demanding that he decide quickly, and he, assessing Holly's speed and strength, realized that living next to her would really make a soldier out of him, after which he quietly admitted that he got the hint. He trembled, begging for just one chance, knowing he needed Edna's confession, but at the same time clearly feeling that there would be no victory in a head-on collision. The ponytailed girl suddenly acknowledged his abilities and declared that she was ready to accept them, which only increased the tension between them. Clenching his fist, he thought that this was only a one-time chance, and he recalled everything he had learned during his special training with his mother, realizing that he wouldn't be able to repeat the trick several times in a row. Then the mentor asked him directly if he had a talent for time magic, and he confirmed that he was able to speed up and slow down the passage of moments, admitting that he had previously done this instinctively, dodging an attack. In response, she unexpectedly showered him with praise, calling him amazing and sweet, pressing herself too close, causing him to become completely at a loss under the barrage of hugs and kisses. Having recovered, he began to think that perhaps he could repeat something similar to what he had seen in his dream, as if in a game where the hero acted on the edge of the impossible. The next moment, the girl threw a right punch, opening up on the left, and it seemed as if even time had not slowed down for a split second. Fina lunged forward with a scream, and Wayne tried to match his response to her rhythm, remembering the movements of the very hero from the game. Soon someone shouted for a doctor when Wayne flew out the window, and a random witness wondered if the new guy was the cause of the noise. By the evening of the first day, a rumor had spread throughout the academy that a first-year student had been punished by an upperclassman, and someone was hysterically insisting that one should not contradict those of higher status. Meanwhile, the teacher, having settled herself by the window, lazily wondered why the two were taking so long to return, casually mentioning that she had already managed to finish all the rice crackers. He was quietly asked if he had woken up Xia. Whether he is, Enboy, lying on the bed, opened his eyes, surprised to realize that there really was someone nearby. Then the owner of long blonde hair calmly responded to the address of Sharon's name, turning her gaze and listening attentively to what was happening. Meanwhile, Wayne, sitting up in bed, awkwardly introduced himself, and the girl standing next to him made it clear that she already knew him, adding that she had heard about him from Norman. After that, she carefully squeezed the fabric in her hands and explained that Norman had asked her to look after him, and the young man listened, involuntarily surprised by such attention. Then he looked around and wondered if this was the first aid station, remembering how he had been thrown back by Edna's blow and hoping Norman hadn't been too worried. She tilted her head and asked if he had lost to a senior, and he, with an embarrassed smile, honestly confirmed it. Then the interlocutor explained that she had a bad reputation and during her studies she had made many people cry, which is why the guy felt a slight tension. However, the girl immediately added that Edna was actually kind and even hid her out of concern, trying to keep Holly away, although this explanation sounded controversial. After that, she said that she would not add anything more since that was what he thought, and since he had already woken up, it was time for her to go back, and he remained sitting with a cup in his hands. Before leaving, she reminded him that it was Norman who had brought him here and looked very worried, advising him to be sure to thank him later, to which Wayne responded with sincere agreement. The door creaked softly, inviting you in, and Boy rapped with a cupsia, thinking again about how Edna's gaze was surprisingly reminiscent of her mother's, stern but caring. When her name was called, Edna flinched and tensed slightly, but quickly replied that she was fine. At that moment, Wayne suddenly fell to his knees, fervently asking to be taken as an apprentice and firmly resolving to remain faithful to her as much as he could. She, after a little hesitation, agreed to train him, saying that if it was his choice, then she would accept it, and he, still nervous, squeezed out a hesitant consent. Boy, sitting on the bed, reacted. She responded with surprise, but the teacher immediately warned her that she would be stern and would not show mercy to anyone, to which she nodded silently. She then advised him to rest more, reminding him that it would directly affect his training, and Wayne, lying down, noted to himself that her palm was warm and unexpectedly soft. Someone extended a hand, and a resemblance to his mother flashed through his mind, but then a sharp voice ordered him to stop swinging and keep his hands closer, returning the sternness. The next day, the boy enthusiastically declared that he was ready to begin training, but the instructor, watching from afar, immediately ordered him to add another 100 swings, noticing that his hand-to-hand combat skills were still weak. Later, Wayne sat slumped against a tree, barely moving his arms and complaining that starting all this right after waking up was a real ordeal. And she, adjusting her clothes, told the person sitting next to her student that there is progress after all, and they will continue with the same workload tomorrow. He caught his breath and admitted that these classes seemed to be much more rigorous than the training with his mother, and, having collected himself, focused on the next task. After this, the teacher ordered him to open his mouth, since his hands were not yet obeying, explaining that eating was also part of the routine, and he froze in surprise, not immediately understanding the meaning. Meanwhile, the girl urged everyone to move. The guy quickly agreed, and a stern figure in dark suit. She noticed that praise would not soften her, after which he sincerely noted that Edna's cooking turned out excellent. Then he, frowning, he wondered why he had agreed to this at all, remembering that he understood perfectly well the reason why he had been called here. Soon, the teacher sternly informed the student with the ponytail that for the attack on the newcomer and a series of previous incidents, she could be expelled without a word. After this, the senior mentor proposed a special solution, emphasizing the importance of the 3 points of the commitment, and the girl listening to him became wary, trying to understand the conditions. She frowned, realizing that the offense would be overlooked for now, and the sharp instructions and her own outburst of aggression came flooding back to her. Meanwhile, the curator gently asked Edna to keep an eye on Wayne, helped him finish his meal, noticed a sauce stain and carefully wiped it away, treating him like family. Then the teacher suggested that he take a little rest after eating and postpone the continuation of the lessons, but she thought to herself that she had never looked after anyone like this before, and he awkwardly thanked her. A joking remark about inexperience followed, and the observer noted to himself that if he had been in Holly's place, she would have easily turned it into a joke, whereas now everything felt different. The pause ended quickly as the end of the break was announced and everyone was ordered to return to the legroom, and someone immediately responded with a clear yes. Along the way, the teacher reflected that although many people asked her for mentoring, almost no one could keep up the pace, even those who were the best in practical assessments. Meanwhile, the young man, drenched in sweat, realized how merciless the regime had turned out to be, and, despite the rumors, he realized that someone was stubbornly pushing forward behind him. After some time, the scientist stated that he had completed 200 approaches and was finished for the day, after which the mentor proposed a test argument, demanding that he prove his superiority, and he agreed. Then a bold condition was voiced about any request of the winner, but the meaning came down to accepting the result and choosing the format of the competition, which made everyone tense. The guy quietly admitted that he understood from the very beginning why it was all started, and in response he heard that this would only add incentive, and his opinion was also important. After that, he confidently declared that he would win the shooting contest, and she explained the rules, charged the staff with power, and hit targets at a distant range. Then he suggested using standard batons, but his rival insisted on using her own instrument, hinting at a hidden peculiarity and an unwillingness to give in. The master of ceremonies then clearly outlined the conditions of the test with 20 targets flying from right to left, emphasizing the extreme difficulty. Finally, the countdown to the start of the challenging competition was given, and a confident participant volunteered to shoot first, enthusiastically accepting the challenge. First, the mentor used time magic, sharply accelerating the flow, and the glass target shattered into pieces, while someone's widened eye caught the instant of impact. The young man then couldn't hide his surprise when he realized she had hit more than 19 targets, and the girl with the ponytail holding a brush to count, noted that the result wasn't perfect but her efforts were worthy of recognition. Then from a distance, it became clear that Edna also possessed acceleration, and therefore the thin arms behind her back had a frightening power, because the blows of her fists and feet were amplified by jerks of time. After that she challenged him with a confident smile, asking if he was going to give in and asking if he really had decided to do so. Meanwhile he insisted on acting himself, taking up the weapon, and the girl standing nearby was confused, not understanding what kind of object it was. Next is the owner. The weapon announced that he was taking the maximum difficulty, and those around him became alarmed, calling for calm as the countdown began. Then Wayne fired a series of shots, the recoil shaking the air, flashes bursting out, and Fina watched from the side, not hiding her amazement. Immediately after this, a confirmation of the perfect result was heard, 20 hits and 1 reload, and the weapon was carefully lowered, as if emphasizing control. Meanwhile, the fair-haired girl froze in the field, trying to understand the strange force she felt, and nearby a figure in a skirt was visible, partially hidden by the angle. Then both exchanged thoughts about the magic of time. At first, she confirmed the similarity with Edna's techniques, then clarified whether she had actually used them. After this, the woman in the dark outfit explained that during time distortions, physical strength loses its meaning and any creatures turn into controllable figures while she easily glided across the platform. Under a cloudy sky, the conversation continued with a question about voluntary activation, and the answer was that the ability was triggered automatically when attention was focused to the utmost. Then the disciple admitted that without his power he would be weaker, but immediately rejected the idea that someone who knows how to control it consciously does not need training. She then made it clear to the boy that time magic alone does not make one strong, because combat skills and precision are born not from acceleration but from daily practice. After that he hugged tightly Mentor, asking her not to frown, and emphasized that even without temporary techniques he considered Edna strong, to which she quietly reminded him of the heart, body and technique. Then the short-haired student with glowing eyes asked, "Take him into training," in ego hope and determination were mixed in his gaze. Meanwhile the young man tried to say something, hesitated, and cautiously called out to Edna, not knowing how best to begin. Later young woman. She admitted defeat in the competition, realizing that any prescribed test would now follow, although the guide did not seek such an outcome. After this, the elder woman explained that such tests are considered normal for men and serve as a way of toughening them up, moving the conversation to the plane of discipline and growth. In conclusion, the teacher asked if Ara had caught a cold. The short-haired student became worried, but the woman in the colorful robe waved her off, joking that they had apparently simply remembered her. After a brief pause, the mentor suggested continuing the conversation, and the priestess casually remarked that the new student looked unusually attractive. The guardian then attempted to diffuse the tension with an inappropriate joke, but the elder immediately cut her off, not allowing the topic to deviate. Then the dark-haired girl, narrowing her eyes, defiantly declared that she wouldn't let him slip away from her influence, as if marking her territory in advance. Her words betrayed not flirtation but a desire for control, which immediately alerted those around her. After this, tension flared in the room. One of those present suggested postponing everything until the morning, another insisted on discussing it right away, and the rest wavered between irritation and an attempt to keep their cool. Meanwhile, the teacher, visibly tired, walked over to the washbasin and tidied herself up. A nearby girl silently handed her a towel, and as she thanked him reservedly, trying not to attract unnecessary attention. A little later, the older one noticed that only one of the students remained nearby and asked where the newcomer was. She calmly explained that he had just stepped away for a moment and the matter was settled without further ado. But then the dark-haired woman went on the offensive again, declaring that she wanted to spend the day alone with him, as she had spent the previous evening plotting how to assert her dominance. The others listened in heavy silence. The blonde then reacted sharply, demanding an explanation and trying to understand what had happened earlier. The response was an evasive confirmation, while the third participant merely paused, hesitating to intervene. After this, one of the girls, visibly nervous, admitted that too many unspoken things had arisen between the two people at once, and this made the situation even more confusing. Then the dark-clad woman flared up with anger and began demanding explanations from everyone at once, accusing her opponent of excessive greed. She, in turn, was confused, trying to understand what they were talking about. There was a moment of silence as someone brought up the old saying about competition and choice, but there was no response, only a dry shrug. Then the dark-haired woman, unabashedly excited, declared that if she could seize the initiative from everyone at once, it would be her final victory. A calm retort followed, preventing such a development. After this, she abruptly stated her position, declaring that she intended to stand by the young man and would not allow others to interfere. Hearing this, her rival hesitated, at a loss for words. The ponytailed girl meanwhile considered the possibility that the feelings might be mutual, and acknowledged that affection isn't always a bad thing. These thoughts left the dark-haired girl clearly perplexed. The tension soon erupted into an open argument, with accusations of betrayal and foul play being leveled. Clenched fists and raised voices made it clear the conflict had gone too far. A hand slightly to the side gripped a handle tightly, and the creaking sound betrayed pent-up emotion. An inner voice compared what it saw with past experiences, finding disturbing differences. Then one of the girls, remembering her mother's care, involuntarily compared it to the other's current sternness, and she responded sarcastically by emphasizing the difference in strength and confidence. The young man listened silently, trying not to interfere. Feeling the pressure growing, he decided to quickly get himself in order, but suddenly noticed movement behind him and flinched in surprise. The next moment, he found himself immobilized, and fear gripped him as he tried to comprehend what they were about to do to him. From the darkness, a remark came that they were lucky to have remained unnoticed during the break. Then came the command to act faster, addressed to the sharp-witted performer, who immediately responded. Another teenager stood motionless to the side, observing the proceedings. In conclusion, the guardian. She warned that extreme measures would only worsen the situation and could result in hatred from her elders, thereby cooling the passions for a moment. Boy kneeling and suppressing his anxiety, he tried to convince those around him that he wouldn't survive if the elder woman turned away from him. Then a figure sitting nearby suggested a different approach, noting that it was enough to neutralize the source of the danger without taking things to extremes. The bound young man's thoughts then vacillated between fear and despair, realizing that the discussion of his fate was taking a frightening turn. He tried to restrain himself from succumbing to panic and find a way out. After that, the mentor came up with a more cold-blooded plan, suggesting temporarily rendering him harmless with a powerful sedative. The shelves of boxes around her only emphasized her habit of calculating. The teenager then thought that the injection would only leave needle marks, and that would be enough to make it look unnoticeable. The girl next to him confirmed that this would keep the older woman calm and not violate her trust. Meanwhile, Fina anxiously acknowledged that the situation had gotten out of control. She had trouble understanding who all these people were and how she had ended up among them. After this, the bound prisoner, barely moving, decided to stall for time, hoping the preparations would take hours. A desperate, albeit illusory, escape plan formed in his head. Then the one holding the rope announced that everything would be ready by nightfall and suggested meeting later. The dark-haired one added that a harmless package would arrive tomorrow, and the fair-haired one cautiously asked if anyone was trying to sneak out. Wayne then lunged but was forced to inhale a heavy odor that promised to cloud his mind and sap his strength until evening. A mocking goodnight was tossed after him. Meanwhile, the mentor, sheepishly concerned about propriety, noticed that the newcomer still hadn't returned from the shower. Fina merely shrugged uncertainly, admitting she knew nothing. After this, the girl in the dark outfit flushed and demanded that he not discuss unnecessary matters in front of her, reminding her of her feelings. The short-haired woman coolly remarked that it would have been easier to avoid the empty flirtations. The figure in the revealing dress then asked if she could involve acquaintances in the search, but was sharply refused, reminded that they weren't a gang, but close allies. A caustic comment came from the sidelines, heightening the tension. Meanwhile, one of the girls lying on her side realized that the younger ones were busy and couldn't help. She took this into account and decided to take a different approach. Afterwards, the mentor at the door noted ironically that he still remained an attractive problem. The prone woman replied that she would resume her search and asked for support, despite her own role in the incident. Then the dark-haired woman in the provocative outfit firmly decided to make her rival owe her and set off to search as well. Her movements were resolute. As she walked down the hallway, the mentor thought of someone's shameless attempt to encroach on her second chance and silently resolved not to give it up to anyone. This thought gave her momentum. Meanwhile, the dark-haired girl noticed that the younger ones were too busy, but remembered other acquaintances with whom it would be easier to reach an agreement. She reasoned that this would speed up the search. The blonde then greeted Holly, who remarked that she had an advantage over her rival. The dark-haired woman cautiously asked if she could join the next meeting and received a thoughtful answer. After that, they asked if Wayne had been seen that morning. In response, they mentioned Holly's unlucky roommate, hinting at a possible lead. Then the girl in dark perked up, and the fair-haired young man pointed in the direction, explaining that he had not met him himself, but had heard conversations among the sisters. In conclusion, the mentor warmly invited everyone to the next meeting, and the long-haired interlocutor responded with genuine joy, not hiding how much this pleased her. The mentor inquired about the progress of the work and was told that all that remained was to wait until the prepared resources were secure. Meanwhile, Fina doubtfully considered the wisdom of acting without her superior's knowledge, and her anxiety only grew. Then the figure on the stairs paused, looking down, and Fina bitterly remarked that if everything had been decided sooner, there wouldn't have been any hesitation now. Immediately afterward, she acknowledged that the moment had already passed and there was no turning back. At that moment, the dark-haired girl asked what they were talking about, and the others, one of them even shouted out the eldest's name, all turned to face her at the same time. After a pause, the woman in the dark dress froze on the steps, torn between the desire to keep everyone away and the fear that any action could cast a shadow on someone close to her. Then the dark-haired girl quietly said that if the older one really wanted it that way, they would have to make that decision. The fair-haired girl next to her frowned and reluctantly agreed, feeling the weight of what was happening. Soon, a startled cry broke the silence, and a young man appeared from the corner, exhausted and sitting on the floor. He was hurriedly called to begin, assured that everything was ready, and at that very moment his name was called, filled with concern. The mentor stepped forward confidently, intending to take control of the situation, and the others listened to her with varying feelings, from anxiety to confusion, realizing that the situation was getting out of control. However, after a moment she stopped, looked around embarrassedly and demanded to know what was going on here, insisting on starting the story from the very beginning. When everything was laid out, the mentor sighed wearily and admitted that she was touched that they had gone so far for her, but inner doubt still did not leave her. A sharp voice then demanded to know how far they were willing to go, accompanying the words with a threatening gesture. The sound of metal in hand heightened the tension. Then came a cold explanation about a prepared means designed to neutralize the threat without unnecessary risk. The speaker's words were laced with harshness and extreme radicalism. At this point, one of the women paused, realizing the true value of the person they were discussing, and for the first time, she allowed herself to consider a more peaceful way out, comparing the details of the plan. Meanwhile, the dark-haired woman remembered how quickly a strong attachment could develop into dependence. Off to the side, two figures discussed a breakup, and one of them casually remarked on someone's kindness. After this, the same dark-haired woman warmly praised her comrades, and an outside observer was surprised at what exactly caused such a lively reaction in Holly. Suddenly, a woman appeared, causing everyone to jump, and admitted that she followed them because of their strange behavior and overheard too much. Immediately following this, an angry warning was heard, full of accusations and demands to be prepared to answer for their actions towards Wayne. One of the girls quickly began to justify herself, but the others calmly reminded her that she had previously supported this idea. One still held the dangerous object in her hands, and the other hurled a harsh nickname. Then the mentor, supporting Wayne, ordered Holly to come with her, making it clear this would be a serious conversation. Someone off to the side reflected bitterly on the pitiful state of their allies, and the young man himself responded hesitantly. Before leaving, the mentor asked if anyone wanted to say anything final. One of those present quickly apologized, claiming he had done nothing wrong and that the conflict had already been mutual. Finally, the mentor paused and firmly stated that responsibility for the actions of her subordinates also falls on the person for whom they acted. Hearing this, the girl sitting across from her only winced quietly, realizing the weight of her words. The young man admitted to Edna with noticeable strain that his head had finally cleared, and he spoke these words carefully. In response, she merely chuckled briefly, as if checking to see if he had truly come to his senses. He then added that Holly hadn't really done anything wrong, and his tone suggested an attempt to make sense of what had happened. The girl next to him immediately said she'd thought about it too and suggested they pretend nothing had happened, since everyone was safe and sound. Then the figure in the dark suit, she coldly warned the woman sitting nearby that excessive softness could one day lead to death. The woman standing next to her hesitated, and then admitted that she had nevertheless learned an important lesson from Holly's actions. A little later, the mentor noted that many are willing to take difficult and risky steps for the sake of someone they love. Then she wondered out loud if this is what charisma is, when people follow someone without even asking questions. Then the girl sitting on the bed shared her opinion that the other girl had a completely different type of strength than Edna. In response, the one standing just smirked and sharply dismissed it, reducing it to sheer desire and impulsiveness. Meanwhile, a participant in a dark outfit declared she had come there for power and to learn from Holly. A man nearby worried that if the incident came to light, the consequences could be serious, but in response, she agreed to leave it at that. Afterwards, she stepped closer and gave Wayne a warm hug, letting him know that his kindness and sincerity attracted good things to him. The hug briefly eased the tension that had built up since the start of the day. Then he caught himself thinking that he'd barely been present for the events of the first day. Off to the side, one girl was nervously apologizing, two others were already chatting casually, and it became clear that most of them had already become close without him. A little later, Wayne felt someone approaching from behind, and his anxiety returned. It seemed to him that entering these circles would require courage, and the whispers around him only heightened the feeling of alienation. At that moment, the balding man greeted Norman with a confident smile. Surprised, Norman asked if he had fully recovered, then gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder, diffusing the tension.